first of all, we need to know why is it called as the intrinsic pathway. It is called the intrinsic pathway. This particular pathway is called so because the process of cell death, the process of apoptosis begins inside the cell, or to be very particular, inside the mitochondria. Hence, it is called mitochondrial pathway or intrinsic pathway. See here, what happens is when there is a signal for apoptosis to occur. When do we have signal for apoptosis to occur? Let's say when there's a DNA damage, or when there's the absence of certain survival factors, or during the when we do not have certain nutrients in the right amount, or due to any other reason, any sort of a stress, the apoptotic pathway can be stimulated, activated. So what happens when the signal for apoptosis begins? What happens is that the cytochrome C, this is a protein which is present in the intermembrane space, or let's say it is present in the mitochondria, in the inner membrane of the mitochondria. It is present. As you can see here, the red colored molecules, these represents the cytochrome C. Cytochrome C is normally present in the mitochondria of a cell. It takes part in the ETC, electron transport chain. What happens during apoptosis is that these cytochrome C are released from the mitochondria. Once they are released, they go and bind with the APAF1. What do you mean by APAF1? APAF1 is nothing but apoptosis activating factor 1. So cytochrome C, it merges or it forms a complex with the APAF1. There is this card domain. I'll be explaining about card domain a little while later. Now let us move on to apoptosome. See, when the cytochrome C forms a complex with the APAF1, there is this large heptameric complex which is formed, that is called apoptosome. It's called heptameric because there are 7 units in it. This particular structure is formed. This particular structure has a card domain. As you can see, even here. Basically, the APAF1 has a card domain. What do you mean by card domain? Card domain stands for caspase recruitment domain. Domain is nothing but a location, a place. Okay, so card domain is the location in APAF1. It's that site in the molecule where there's a recruitment of caspase. That's why it's called caspase recruitment domain, card domain. Now, what do you mean by recruitment? Recruitment is like hiring. It's like appointing. So what are we appointing? We are appointing caspases, to be specific, procaspases, because procaspases are inactive. Basically, all the caspases are in the form of procaspases which are inactive. We have to activate it. So what happens here in intrinsic pathway particularly, it is the procaspase 9 which gets activated. So procaspase 9 is the initiator procaspase that gets activated. In the card domain, the procaspase 9 is recruited. There's recruitment and activation of procaspase 9. You can see here the different there are different procaspase 9 that aligns itself and they get activated. And once the procaspase 9 gets activated, it forms the caspase 9 and it goes and activates the other executioner procaspases that carries out the function of apoptosis by targeting the different proteins. This is the intrinsic pathway of apoptosis. Alright, now we'll move on to the extrinsic pathway. The extrinsic pathway is also called as the death receptor initiated pathway, or simply the death receptor pathway. Why do we call it extrinsic pathway? Is because the process of cell death or the process of apoptosis is initiated outside the cell. That is why it's called the extrinsic pathway. Here we make use of a death receptor called as the FAS death receptor or the FAS death receptor. That is why we call it the death receptor pathway. As you can see here, this is the death receptor which is present on the surface of our target cell, which has to undergo apoptosis. The FAS ligand or FAS ligand present on the surface of our killer lymphocyte basically activates our FAS death receptor. But by binding to the FAS death receptor, the FAS ligand activates it. Another extra point here is that both the ligand and the receptor, that is the FAS ligand and the FAS death receptor, they are homotrimers. What do you mean by homotrimers? It means they are made up of a similar type of proteins, 3 proteins which are of the same type. 3 identical units of polypeptides. That's called homotrimers. Now what happens when the FAS ligand binds to the FAS death receptor? The cytosolic tail is nothing but this. the tail which is present towards the cytoplasm of the cell, it's called the cytosolic tail of the receptor. They recruit adapter proteins. In the previous slide, I've told you what recruitment is, like hiring. It's like hiring. So the cytosolic tail hires the adapter proteins. This adapter protein is nothing but the FAD adapter protein. FAD stands for fast associated death domain. Apart from the FAD adapter proteins, there are other proteins also like TRAD, TRADD. But to simplify the whole process here, let us stick on to FAD adapter proteins for the time being. So the cytosolic tail of our receptor, it recruits the adapter proteins, FAD adapter protein. This FAD adapter protein in turn again recruits the procaspase 8 or 10, which are the initiation procaspases, through the death effector domain. So this is actually not that confusing as much as it sounds. It is in the previous intrinsic pathway. What did we see? We saw that the cytochrome C, it forms a complex with the EPAF1, and then the apoptosome is formed, which recruits procaspase 9 directly. So in the intrinsic pathway, it was the procaspase 9 which was directly recruited. But in the extrinsic pathway, we do not recruit the procaspase 8 or 10. In extrinsic, it is 8 or 10. In intrinsic, it was 9. Procaspase 9. Here we do not recruit the procaspase 8 or 10 directly, but this recruitment is done through two steps. One is the cytosolic tail of our receptor. It is, first of all, it recruits the FAD adapter proteins. The FAD adapter proteins then recruits our procaspases. How does it recruit the procaspases? Through the death domain. The death domain, the death effector domain. In fact, through the death effector domain, the death effector domain is nothing but a site. Through using this site, the FAD adapter proteins recruits the procaspase 8 or 10. Now, the death effector domain, as you can see, it is not just present in the FAD protein, the red color. This red color, this is the death effector domain. It is not just present in the FAD adapter proteins, but it is also present in the procaspase 8 or 10. You can see it here, red color. Both these structures, both the molecules have the death effector domain. Now, when the procaspase 8 or 10 is recruited, this final assembly forms a disc. Disc stands for death-inducing signaling complex. This is formed now. Once the disc is formed, the procaspase 8 or 10, they get activated, they are cleaved. They cleave each other because they are in close proximity. They are held closely, these procaspases, and they cleave one another. They are activated. Once they are activated, what do? They go and activate the other executioner procaspases. Once the executioner procaspases are activated, what do? They go and cleave the target proteins that we saw earlier. So here, once the caspase 8 or 10 gets activated, we see a caspase cascade. In many books, you will find these words, caspase cascade. What do you mean by that? Caspase, we already know. Caspases are basically proteolytic enzymes. What is a cascade? Cascade is a chain of reactions, a chain of activation or cleavage begins. That's what is meant by a caspase. A cascade is activated that eventually leads to apoptosis. So this is about the extrinsic pathway. Moving on.
Look up table on joint completion.
Moving on to the regulators of apoptosis, these are the main regulators of apoptosis. We have BCL2 proteins, majorly most important is the BCL2 proteins. Apart from that, we have the IAPs, inhibitors of apoptosis, and the anti-IAP. So firstly, we'll begin with the BCL2 proteins. BCL2 proteins is a family of regulatory proteins which is again subdivided into pro-apoptotic proteins and anti-apoptotic proteins. The name itself suggests pro-apoptotic proteins means these are the proteins which support, or let's say they cause apoptosis. Anti-apoptotic proteins are the proteins which do not let apoptosis to occur. That is, they are against the process of apoptosis. Whereas pro-apoptotic proteins, they cause apoptosis. Again, under pro-apoptotic proteins, we have BH123 proteins and the BH3 only proteins. The examples of BH123 proteins will be BAX. These two are, it is not that only two proteins belong to BH123. There are many more proteins. I have only included these two. BH3 only proteins, again, there's BIM, BID, PUMA, NOXA, BAD, etc. Similarly, examples of anti-apoptotic proteins that do not allow apoptosis to occur will be BCL2. BCL2 in fact was the first protein of this family that was discovered. Hence, the entire regulatory proteins is named after the BCL2 itself. That's why it's called the BCL2 family. So BCL2 particular protein belongs to the anti-apoptotic proteins only. Apart from that, we have BCLXL. Now we'll see how they work, how they regulate apoptosis. See, they are called regulators of apoptosis because they are able to regulate, they are able to control apoptosis. It depends on these proteins whether apoptosis should occur or it should not occur. So they are able to control the entire process of cell death. We'll start off with BH123 proteins, which is a pro-apoptotic proteins. Since we know that BH123 belongs to pro-apoptotic proteins, what does it mean? They should cause apoptosis. Now, what happens? How do they cause apoptosis? See, when we have a stimulus for apoptosis to occur, when there's an apoptotic stimuli in the cell, now the cells know that they have to undergo cell death, they have to kill themselves. What happens is the BH123 proteins which are present on the surface of the mitochondria. Not all BH123 proteins are present on the surface of mitochondria. Some are present in the cytoplasm, but once we have the stimulus for apoptosis, they have to move to the mitochondrial membrane surface. Okay, so I'll show you with the help of a diagram. So you can see here, these are, okay, let me show it here. These are basically the BH123 proteins, which are basically the pro-apoptotic proteins, which are present on the surface of the mitochondria. Now what happens when there's a stimulus? These proteins, they aggregate. As you can see, when there's an apoptotic stimulus, they aggregate to form a pore. They come together and they form a pore. They form a gap. It's like a gate they form. Now what happens when there's a pore? The proteins which are present inside the mitochondria, the proteins, the intermembrane proteins present in the mitochondria, especially the cytochrome C, they are able to move out of the mitochondria. These cytochrome C are able to move out with the help of these spores into the cytoplasm. And we've already seen in the intrinsec pathway that once cytochrome C comes out, it binds with APAF1, it forms a complex called apoptosome. It's a large heptameric complex which recruits procaspase 9 particularly and cleaves it and activates it. Later on, this procaspase 9 which has been activated, it will go and cleave the other executioner procaspases, and then the caspase cascade begins. Okay, that is what happens here. So BH123 proteins are able to, they basically form a pore. Moving on to, before we discuss BH3 proteins role, we'll be able to appreciate the role of BH3 proteins better if we first understand the role of anti-apoptotic proteins. So now we'll move on to the role of anti-apoptotic proteins, namely BCL2, BCLXL, etc. What happens here is that when there is no stimuli for apoptosis, that is during the normal condition, when the cells are functioning normally, there is no stress, there is no need for the cell to undergo cell death. That time what happens is that, as you can see here, the BCL2 proteins or BCLXL or any example or any protein belonging to anti-apoptotic proteins, what do? They go and they bind with our BH123 proteins. Once they bind to our BH123 proteins, the BH123 proteins are not freely available to form pore, because they have to form a pore in order for them to initiate apoptosis. They are not able to form a pore. Why? Because BCL2 proteins are binding to it. They are holding them tightly, so they are not able to aggregate. BH123 is not able to aggregate. This is how the anti-apoptotic proteins work. Okay. Moving on, now that we know the function of BH123 proteins, we know the function of anti-apoptotic proteins, now we'll be able to understand the function of BH3 only proteins like BIM, BID, PUMA, etc. Now what happens is, when there's an apoptotic stimulus, because we know that BH3 belongs to pro-apoptotic proteins, proteins are activated when there is an apoptotic stimulus. So what happens is the activated BH3 only proteins, they go and they bind or they inhibit the BCL2 proteins. Now what happens? Our BCL2 is not going to disturb the BH123 proteins. So BH123 proteins can aram se form, aggregate together. They can form a pore. Cytochrome C and other intermembrane proteins, they move out of the mitochondria into the cytoplasm. So how is BH3 acting? It is acting by binding or inhibiting BCL2, or let's say BH3 is inhibiting the anti-apoptotic proteins from performing their function. Okay, apart from this, BH3 proteins, they can they can do two functions. One is they can inhibit the anti-apoptotic proteins, as we can see here. BH3 is holding back the BCL2 proteins, hence our BH123 is freely available to aggregate and form a pore. Either it can do that, or it can directly promote the aggregation of BH123. That is this is a more direct way of action, whereas inhibiting BCL2 and then that's how allowing the BH123 to aggregate, this is a more indirect mechanism. Okay, so this is about BCL2 proteins. Apart from BCL2 proteins, we also have the IAPs, which are the regulators. IAP stands for inhibitors of apoptosis. See, during the normal condition, the apoptosis should not occur during the normal healthy state of the cell. So what happens is IAPs, inhibitors of apoptosis, are spread or scattered all over the cytoplasm. What do these do? They prevent any accidental apoptosis to occur. Let's say there is this one caspase which is activated accidentally. There is no need for the cell to undergo cell death at that point of time, but accidentally one procaspase has been activated. So this caspase is very dangerous because we know that it will go and cleave all the target important proteins of our cell. So what does IAPs do? IAPs, they go and bind to any caspase, activated caspase, which might have been activated accidentally. This it can do. Apart from that, some of the IAPs, inhibitors of apoptosis, which are present in the cytoplasm, they also mark the caspases for degradation by the proteasomes. So the caspases are marked. Hence, since the caspases are marked, it is like a signal. So it is like a signal for the proteasomes that can go and degrade the caspases. This happens in case of IAPs. When we talk about anti-IAPs, anti-IAPs basically are present in the mitochondria. Here what we need to understand is that IAPs are present in cytoplasm, anti-IAPs are present in the mitochondria. Anti-IAPs, they function when there is an apoptotic stimuli. When there is an apoptotic stimuli, the BH123, they aggregate, they form a pore, and we know that cytochrome C comes out. It is not just the cytochrome C that comes out of the mitochondrial membrane, but there are many other proteins that comes out. One such protein will be anti-IAPs. Anti-IAPs come out of the mitochondria and then they bind to IAPs. So now they are inhibiting IAPs from performing their function. If the IAPs are inhibited, then the caspases can actively perform their own function. This is the whole role. IAPs inhibit apoptosis, which is required during normal condition. Anti-IAPs, they inhibit IAPs. Anti-IAPs are activated during the point when the apoptotic stimuli has occurred. Now the cells have to die. Caspases have to be activated. We don't want caspases to be degraded by IAPs. Hence, anti-IAPs are release that goes